That's his third down conversion. Back to him they go. The flea flicker.
And a flea flicker. Flea flicker. Blunt threw it back.
The flea flicker.
Flea flicker.
Now you got a flea flicker.
Well, this is a flea flicker they've been running for many, many years up here in New England.
Welcome back to the Flea Flicker Picks Preview. Today we'll be running through the start and beginning of college football, as well as week 1 of the NFL next season. I'm joined with Pal, my former partner on the Breakdown podcast. Me, him, and Wade Rainey. For a good couple months, we're running a solid schedule of the Breakdown podcast, talking about NBA, college sports, as well as recapping the NFL. So welcome back, Pal.
Yeah, excited to be here. I'm really looking forward to giving out some picks on this show. I think with NFL back, that's one of the most exciting things, apart from the experience of watching it, is making these bets. So I'm ready to get into it.
Yeah, I'm excited to sell these picks as well. Past month or so, we've been running MLB, and we have a record of 74-55, I believe. So it's better than a lot of experts out there, especially for those bigger networks. Let's get right into college football starting today. Last week we had Georgia Tech versus Florida State. That was a great game, to say the least. And I know the announcers were loving it too. Their Dublin beer that they had. Just quick thoughts, like briefly about that game.
I thought that was a great kind of introduction to college football for this year. The most beautiful thing about that sport is the unpredictability. Georgia Tech came into that game. They showed that they were better than what a lot of people expected. And they came up and they built from last year. Last year, they had a good year. Florida State, obviously, the loser of that game. A lot of questions surrounding that program now. The last couple of games that they've put out on the field, nothing for the fans to get optimistic about. We'll see how they rebound. And it was just a great way to kick off the college football season.
Florida State obviously losing a load of players, transfer portal and the drafts. Today, though, we have a full slate. Stanford, TCU, Colorado, UNC, Minnesota, all those teams play today. I'm going to start off with a bet I like. It's in the Colorado game. I didn't want to touch the spread. I'm not sure how Deion's going to play the game out, but I do know that it will be a high-scoring, high-passing matchup, as it always is with those West Coast teams. Will Shepard to get 62-plus receiving yards is my lock for today. It's sitting at minus 125. I know a lot of people liked Shedeur Sanders' passing prop as well, but I think this was a little low for a receiver just transferred from the SEC. Big-time receiver, obviously in a huge passing offense. You know he's going to produce.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I'm going to look at that TCU-Stanford game. One of the things I really like about this game is the over. Both teams have subpar defenses and offenses that are pretty consistent from the year before. So I like the over in that one, and I'll actually take Stanford to cover. That's probably the unpopular pick of the two, but I think that Stanford playing at home is going to have an advantage, along with the fact that they're coming into that ACC. They want to make a statement. They want to get off on the right track, and I think that the continuity from last season being their head coach's first year to this year, he's going to be able to work with his players a lot more and put a product out on the field that is better than what they've seen the last couple of years over there.
I don't mind the pick, and strangely, these two games are connected. TCU playing Colorado in their opener last season. Colorado shocked the world when they beat TCU, who was in the national championship the year before. So I don't mind. I like that pick a lot. Stanford, the line's moving in favor of Stanford, so get it while you can. Let's move away from college football now and get into our favorite NFL plays for this upcoming season. We have a couple futures on the slate, starting with regular season MVP. A couple of lines out there just to start. Mahomes is number one wow, I need to learn how to speak. Mahomes is at plus 475. He's the number one dog. CJ Stroud is sitting at plus 800. This is all on DraftKings. Josh Allen plus 900. Burrow plus 950. And then, surprisingly, Brock Purdy and Lamar Jackson sitting a little lower at plus 2,000. So we're going to go through 3 different tiers here, picking regular season MVP futures. Pal, I'm going to ask you, who do you think can realistically win MVP? What do you think is also a good value MVP pick? And then who is your long shot MVP?
Sure, yeah. So I think realistically, whenever you look at the odds, they reflect this as well. You have tier one MVP candidates, that's Patrick Mahomes by himself, and then you have a tier two, which goes from players like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about, but that extends down to even Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love. And I think out of all those guys in that second tier, CJ Stroud is a very attractive pick. He's going to be a guy that's really going to have total control of the offense coming into this second year, more weapons around him. And I think the Texans are poised for a breakout year. We're going to talk about this later when we get into our regular season predictions as well. But I think CJ Stroud has all the tools around him, and he himself is capable enough of really shocking the world, building on that great year that he had last year. And I think he can win MVP. The way that he was playing in some of those games, his averages, he doesn't turn the ball over. He can go for 400 yards, very accurate with the ball. I just think he has a lot of the tools that it takes to win MVP. And I think that whenever you compare that to the rest of the field, he has a leg up.
That Texans receiving room loaded now. Just you can probably say that they have three number one wide receivers: Tank Dell, Diggs, and Nico Collins. Nico Collins probably the most underrated of all of them. He eclipsed over 1,000 yards last season, and he only had like 400 yards going into week 10 of the season. Pretty impressive stuff after Tank Dell went down with injury.
Dalton Schultz as well.
Dalton
He's an important
Schultz, Joe
yeah.
Mixon, that running back room looking pretty good too. I like the pick. Unfortunately, as a Bills fan, I don't like making this decision, but I have to go with Pat Mahomes. Plus 475 is my realistic MVP. I thought about this one for a couple seconds. I wanted to go with Josh Allen, but then my reason for picking Josh Allen would have been there's not many great weapons that are going to take away from him running the ball and getting almost 100% of that volume that offense will need, because their pieces are very young and very not used to the playbook right now. But the Kansas City Chiefs, the past 4 years, the game plan has not changed. They brought back Juju Smith-Schuster. They have Marquise Brown now. They drafted Xavier Worthy in the first round. Their offensive line is still number one in the whole league. Their defense was the best we've ever seen from a Kansas City defense in decades. This team is set up to three-peat, and this offense is also set up very well for Patrick Mahomes. So give me Mahomes at MVP. What do you like, though, for as a value pick? Something that looks attractive number-wise, but maybe not as realistic as our first two picks.
Yeah, give me my man Jalen Hurts. Can't leave him out of this conversation. As an Eagles fan, I got to put him right there in the conversation because I feel like he gets overlooked a lot whenever people look at his numbers. Maybe because they give him credit because of the team around him, having two, proven wide receivers. I think that's going to make his kind of argument weaker than a lot of the other guys that we talk about. But I think this year he's coming into this season with an excellent offseason. In the training camp, he went like 300 pass attempts without throwing a pick. We have the offense under Kellen Moore's control now. Sirianni does not have influence over it whatsoever. We already know Kellen Moore's track record. He's a brilliant offensive mind. New pieces to play with Saquon Barkley. That read option with Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, any short yardage situations, that read option is going to cause some nightmares, especially when you got to play man out with, AJ and then Devontae on the on the ends there. So I think the Eagles offense is going to be potent. If this is the year they get back, that slide at the end of last year was just abominable. That was just a ridiculous thing we haven't seen. I mean, we saw the Steelers do something like that a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, where they started off the season 11-0 and then just kept losing. The Eagles went down a similar kind of trend, and we'll see if they can rebound. I think Jalen Hurts, he has the mentality to rebound, and the offense looks poised as ever.
Yeah, that Steelers team never quite recovered since, but I do like this Eagles team overall. Jalen Hurts still an MVP caliber player. What was the line on that MVP pick?
He on DraftKings is plus 1,200, but a lot of the other like FanDuel, ESPN Bet, MGM, they all have him around 1,400.
That's definitely value right there. And speaking of Brock Purdy, plus 2,000 for a team that went to the Super Bowl, for an MVP candidate himself last year. Probably was he top 3 in MVP voting? I believe he was.
Yeah,
And
he was making waves.
He was, especially at the end of the season when it kind of got murky as who we were deciding was going to be MVP. But he is set up even better than he was last year. If the Niners can get Ayuk back on this offense, they just added Ricky Pershall, first round pick as well. This offensive line is still insane. Kyle Shannon's still the head coach. Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa. I don't need to really say anything else. He's got all the tools around him, and plus 2,000 is pretty juicy if you're looking at it for me. If you had to pick a long shot pick, though, someone that probably I wouldn't put as much money on, but if you had a little fun money, you might want to spend a dime. Who would you pick?
Yeah, I like Jared Goff for this category. I think the Lions are coming in. At this point of the year, what we're looking at is what the team is going to build on from the year before. So the Lions, they were in the NFC Championship game a few months ago. I think that is a statement in and of its own. I think they have a lot of young pieces, talented wide receivers. Gibbs is supposed to be recovering from his injury pretty quickly. I think Jared Goff is someone that can, if he can just take that next step, he's been a consistent quarterback his whole career. If he can take that next step with the Lions, really fight for that 1 seed this year, I think, he can be looking at an MVP type season as well.
Yeah, my long shot MVP is rookie number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams. I know Wade will like this pick. There has not been a rookie quarterback set up this good in a very long time in the NFL. Usually, the teams that have the number 1 overall pick are very bad. For guys like Bryce Young, it's hard to produce. It's hard to develop an offense that has just such a lack of talent. But Caleb Williams does not have a lack of talent on this offense. Keenan Allen was a top 5 wide receiver going into week 7 until he got hurt. DJ Moore showed he can thrive even in an offense where Justin Fields is the quarterback. DeAndre Swift is a running back that may have bounced around a bit, but he will be a good safety net. He was for Jalen Hurts. He put up great fantasy numbers last year. Cole Kmet, a young tight end that I think will have a breakout season. I mean, Caleb Williams is set up so well. And this defense, too. I think if his defense can help him out a little bit, get him better field position on offense, Montez Sweat, Jalen Johnson. I just think this is a stacked Bears team, and a lot of people still are underrating him. I know the personality of Caleb Williams isn't too popular right now. He's very, very cocky, very confident, but typically I don't like people who are that cocky, but there's something different about him. I mean, he said he went to Oklahoma to beat out Spencer Rattler when Spencer Rattler was the number 1 projected overall pick of his class. Just insane. He beat him out. I don't know. There's too many things going well for Caleb Williams. That's why he's my long shot MVP pick. He was valued at plus 4,500, so way higher, way lower odds than Goff, obviously. But that's my long shot.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I think this Bears team is going to surprise a lot of people, and I was glad you mentioned the defense because I think they're gonna shock some people and put the Bears in games that they don't deserve to be in or they shouldn't be in, and then they'll kind of leave it up to their rookie star quarterback and see if they can snag a win.
All right. Predictions. We are going to go through every single division briefly, spend a minute or two on each one, and go through our predictions for this upcoming NFL season. I'll be making a graphic for this. I made a couple last year, and I wasn't too off on some of these predictions, so we'll come back and recap to see how we did. But let's start off with the AFC North, pal. Just give me a quick list and order of what the AFC North looks like in 2024.
Sure. So I have the Bengals getting the 2 seed, 13-4, Ravens 12-5, Browns 10-7, and the Steelers lowly 3-14. I think looking at this division, it's one of the strongest divisions in the NFL, like it has been for years past. And the 3 players that we're going to spend the most amount of time talking about, Bengals, Ravens, Browns. I think the Bengals have the leg up because of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. I think the 2 of them together, healthy, is still the best quarterback wide receiver tandem in the NFL. I think that they're going to have a great year. I will say, though, the Ravens, I know that's going to be a lot of people's pick to win the division. I just think they're going to be too one-sided with the run game. It's going to cost them a few games like it does every couple of years. They lose a game or two that they maybe should win when they're in a shootout, and they just end up on the wrong side of these shootout games. Their offense is going to be even more one-dimensional now that they have Derrick Henry as the second star paired up next to Lamar. And they're going to have a great season as well, 12-5. They might go further than the Bengals will in the playoffs, but I think for the regular season, the Bengals are better equipped to make a better stretch. And then the Browns, 10-7. They had a great year last year, surprised a lot of people. I think the defense is still going to be the better side of that football team. The offense is improving as well, but I just don't know if I have faith in the quarterback play, along with just the entire group as a whole. I think that compared to the other teams in their division, they're definitely more than just a leg down on offense, and there's only so much the defense can make up.
Interesting. 3-14 is brutal for the Steelers, but I mean, I also have them coming in last in the division at 8-9. The rest of the division wasn't too off. Ravens at the top, 11-6. Browns 10-7. Bengals 9-8. Steelers 8-9. Let's move on to the AFC East. I have the Bills sitting at 10-7. Not as great as last year, but I think this is going to be a very competitive year in the NFL. You're going to see a lot of the better teams from last year stick around their win total, and then some teams from last year who did not do as well, they're gonna dip just because there's a lot of continuity with the quarterbacks who have established themselves on good teams, say like the Bengals, the Bills, Chiefs, Niners, Rams. I think the Seahawks now, they like Geno Smith. So the bottom half of this entire league is going to see a big dip because I think the quarterback play now is just so even. And it's an interesting algorithm, but back to the AFC East, I got the Jets under the Bills at 9-8, Dolphins at 7-10, Patriots at 4-13. Drake May will be quarterback 2 because Jacoby Brissett was just announced the starter today.
Yeah, I have the Bills winning that division as well. 12-5, Dolphins 10-7, Jets 10-7, Patriots 1-16. I agree with you. When we talk about the league as a whole, it's going to be interesting just looking at how the progression of certain teams goes on year after year. I think in the NFL we see a lot of parity. We see a lot of teams that were last or third in their division move up, get first and second. I think that's going to be relevant this year as well. But I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are stuck with 1, 2, 3, 4 wins, and they just like usually you have a couple of teams that only have 4 wins or less. I think this year you're going to have 4, 5, 6 teams just because the better teams are getting better. The worst teams, it's just hard to like even with the Seahawks. We'll get to this later. I have the Seahawks rated pretty low because I just don't think Geno Smith can cut it for a whole year. I mean, he's a great, he's an average quarterback. He's a great team. He's a great quarterback for a team like the Seahawks. But I just don't think if you're, trying to get past that 500 mark, you need 9, 10 wins with this new playoff format to get in the playoffs. I just don't know if quarterbacks like Geno Smith are going to cut it.
I agree, and I think we're going to see more teams that have maybe in both of our predictions, we have a couple teams with 10 wins that didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, for me it's the Jets. The Jets are 10-7, but they're not the way that I have the schedule made. Is the Jets are not going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be the first team looking in.
It'll be a super interesting year for sure. Quarterback plays at the best we've ever seen, especially now. That's you starting to see how important quarterback depth is. So many the Chargers just traded for Taylor Heineke, so that's when AFC South. Let's move that down there. What do you like?
We talked about this earlier with the MVP discussions, but I mean the Texans are going to win. I have them at 11-6, Jags 9-8, Colts 9-8, and then the Titans 5-12. I think the Jags and Colts are both going to be able to give the Texans a run for their money. I think throughout the year we're going to look at the standings, and any one of those 3 teams is going to be at the top of it. I think the Colts are exciting, but they don't have that depth that we're talking about. Anthony Richardson is going to be. He's going to be a stellar quarterback in the NFL. I just don't know if the pieces are there around him yet. I like Mitchell a lot, the Georgia wide receiver they drafted this year. I think he's going to break out and surprise people. But I just don't know if the Colts or Jags have enough to kind of deal with the firepower that the Texans do. And I think in this division, like always, those divisional matchups are going to be the decider of who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. and I think the Texans are better equipped, and they're going to come out of this division.
I agree. I feel like every time I turn on the Red Zone channel and I'm watching an AFC South divisional game, it's a barn burner, and usually the team you expect to win doesn't. So, in this case, I don't even have three of the four teams going over 500. I think the Titans and Colts will sit at 8 and 9. The Jags take a dip. Defensively, I don't see anything positive besides re-signing or besides getting that contract extension for Joshua Hines Allen now. And yeah, I like the Texans at the top at 10 and 7. CJ Stroud showed enough definitely last year, and they got better. So last team in the AFC, or last division in the AFC, the AFC West. I think we all have the Chiefs at the top, obviously, but what's the rest of that order look for you? Division C.
Yeah, I got the Raiders. It's similar, actually, now that I'm looking at it, it's very similar to the AFC South that I predicted. I think we're going to have the Chiefs outright winners 13-4, but then the Raiders and Chargers both 9-8, Broncos 3-14. I don't think either one of those teams, the Raiders or Chargers, have what it takes to really make a real playoff push, but they're good enough to win games, and they'll both, be hovering around that nine win mark, and they're going to be looking outside when the playoffs start, but they're both going to be ready to go the next year, hoping that they can make it happen.
I do think three of these teams in this division all got worse. If you think about it, Broncos have to restart over with Bo Nix. They got rid of Justin Simmons, Chubb last couple years ago. They're rebuilding this franchise. The Raiders, I don't even know what they're doing. They signed Gardner Minshew. Hopefully they trade Devontae Adams later this season. And then the Chargers they started their rebuild last year. So Chiefs have this division easily. Let's move on to here. I'll go over the records real quick because they are definitely worse than the AFC South. I have the Raiders and Broncos sitting at 5-12, and the Chargers at 6-11. The Chiefs with the best division or best record in the AFC at 14-3. Moving on to the NFC. Start with the NFC North, pal. You have the Lions winning?
I do. I have the Lions winning. I think the NFC this year is going to be very top heavy. You have 3, maybe 4 teams that are just, heavyweights. And I think Lions are going to be one of them. 13-4. They're going to, have a good set of division games. I think they're going to go 4-2 in their division, which is going to be big. And I think the Packers are going to be after them 10-7. Bears 8-9. Vikings 3-14. Again, I just don't see any hope with the Vikings. I know that they're all around. They have a lot of players that can play ball. They're a good team. They showed resilience after the quarterback injuries last year, after Justin Jefferson's injury last year. I just think that kind of strength is, you don't get that easily. And I think they're going to have to really dig deep if they want to make something happen from this year after hearing about the JJ McCarthy news. How many of those types of blows can you withstand? And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this is Jefferson's last year in Minnesota as well.
That's actually a great question to pose. I have the Vikings up a little higher with 6 wins just because they brought in a lot of pieces this offseason expecting McCarthy to start. Obviously, the injury happened, and I don't like Sam Darnold to do much at all. So I got the Vikings sitting at 6-11. I do think the rest of the division will be fairly competitive, fairly better than last year too. The Bears take a step up. They go 9-8. I love Jordan Love. I don't say I love Jordan Love and the Packers. I think as a team, they need to figure out what their identity is on offense. They have the quarterback. I just think they need to find a wide receiver one, find a running back one. They signed Jacobs, but will he be good enough after coming off a crazy volume in Las Vegas? I don't know. So I think the Packers will fare pretty well in the NFC. I think the Niners are the only team they have to get past. And then obviously same problem with the Lions. So 12-5, win under the 13 win total for you. I think it's pretty similar across the board. Let's move to.
You have the Packers in the playoffs though.
Oh, you didn't have the Packers in the. Would you have the Packers at?
No, actually. So the Packers are going to be my 8th seed. They're going to be the one that are the first one out. I think we're going to get to this earlier. I have a few surprising picks. I think that people are going to react to at least.
All right. So, okay. Let's move on to the NFC East. You have the Eagles on top, I'm assuming.
Of
Right?
course, yeah. So yeah, of course. 13-4 as well for the Eagles. They're gonna win all their division games. So, beating the Cowboys twice. I think the Cowboys are gonna be that second team in this division. It's pretty obvious. They just committed to CD Lamb. Dak might not get his contract this year. We'll probably get one next offseason. But I think the Eagles 13-4, Cowboys taking a step down 11-6, and then Giants 5-12, Commanders 3-14. I just the parity in that division is not existing. You have two really good teams that are definitely going to make the playoffs. I can say definitely, unless the Cowboys have an insane blow up, and then you have two teams that are probably going to be drafting in the first 5, 6, 7 teams next year.
Yeah, the Giants, obviously, they haven't gotten better. Besides, I think their receiving core got a little better, but when Daniel Jones is your quarterback, it really doesn't matter. I got the Commanders at 5-12, Giants at 5-12, Cowboys, Eagles at the top of the division. Similar records, 11-6 and 10-7. I like the Eagles to win the division. I think their team is better than Dallas, especially if Dallas has to move on from Micah. I think the defense, they also lost Deron Bland a couple days ago. He'll be out for 6 to 8 weeks. And I don't know how Trevon Diggs is going to come off his ACL injury, but I do like the continuity with Philly and Dallas, and I expect both these teams to make the playoffs. When it comes to the NFC South, this is an interesting division. One extremely very bad team. I'd say 2 question marks, maybe 3, with the other 3 squads in this division. I have Tampa sitting at the top at 11-6. I liked what I saw last year from Baker, and this Bucs team is very dangerous on the outside with Evans and Godwin, and they can jam it up your throat, or down your throat, I should say, with Rashad White. They also picked up Bucky Irving, and that defense is very good under Todd Bowles. The Atlanta obviously improved. Kirk Cousins will get him to 10-7. I don't like Derek Carr of the Saints at all. I didn't see anything last year, and they didn't make any big moves this year to convince me otherwise as to why they should be over 500. And then I think Carolina improves the win total, but they'll still be 5-12 and still awful.
Yeah, so I was this division was actually one of the more confusing ones, like it always is. I think the Bucs are gonna win. I have them at 12-5, but I like looking hindsight, I guess that doesn't seem very. I think they'll probably, it's more realistic for them to win 10 or 11. Falcons, I have them at 10-7. I think they're gonna be good. I think their defense is gonna be a lot better than what people expect. And then I think Kirk Cousins is he's above average. He's in that tier right below those guys that we talk about in the MVP race and stuff when it comes to quarterback play. He's a dependable quarterback. I think he's going to get them to a 10-7 season. They're going to win a lot of their division games, which is honestly what matters, because I think the Saints are 5-12, Panthers 3-14, 2 lowly teams. I'm with you on the Derek Carr take. I think it will not be so. I would not be surprised to see Spencer Rattler starting for the Saints before the halfway point of the year. Just because that franchise needs a rebuild, whether they know it or not. So
I feel like they got a lot of middle-aged players right now who were stars, and they're quickly losing value. I like Olave, but that's really the only good prospect they have.
Kamara as well. Kamara's supposed to be 100% healthy, and
yeah, I mean, he's getting up there in age. He'll still be great this season, but I mean, he's no CMC.
he's no workhorse like he used to be.
Yeah. What do you like when we moving out west? The West Coast.
Yeah, so I think the best team in football is in this division, 49ers. They're a complete squad. You already talked about the players they have. It's not a debate. So according to my predictions, I have them, the Lions, and the Eagles all at 13-4. And the way these NFC matchups head out is the Niners get the 3 seed, which looking back on that, I think that's very implausible. So I think, 13-4, they'll probably be the 1 seed in my opinion. And then I think the Cardinals are going to make the playoffs this year. I think this will be Kyler Murray's best year. Mercedes Marv is going to have the type of rookie year impact that we saw Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase have. He's just going to instantly put himself up there as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I have them winning 11 games this year. And then the Rams 10-7. I think the Rams will miss out on the playoffs. I think the NFC is going to be very competitive. So I said that the Falcons make the playoffs earlier. I have the Cardinals in the playoffs now. And that means teams like the Rams and the Packers are going to be the ones that are looking from the outside in at the end of the year. And then the worst team in that division, and in my opinion, maybe the worst team in football this year, is going to be the Seahawks. 3-14 is my prediction. But I think they'll, if they win a few more games than that, it'll be because Geno Smith plays incredible and that defense plays incredible. But a lot of change with no more Pete Carroll is going to be just huge. Losing someone like that for so long, after so long, is going to be just ridiculous. I think we're going to see some compounded effects that we didn't see last year. They're going to take a step back, in my opinion, and be the lowly seed in that division.
I would agree with you that the Cardinals are going to take a step up this year from a couple wins. I don't think they'll get to 11. That's pretty steep considering what their roster looks like. But I do love Marvin Harrison Jr. Maybe it's a season too early. I got them at 8-9. They'll be at the bottom of the division. I have Seattle at 9-8, 3-14. I actually like your explanation for why they'll go 3-14. So it makes sense, but they have a great defense right now, and the players on their roster, whether they decide to ship them out if they start playing, if as a team they start performing poor, we'll see. But they have probably the best defensive back.
They have the best pass
trio.
defense, I would say. One of the best pass defenses in the league, yeah.
Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen are dogs, and then Julian Love at safety is solid. They picked up a couple of key pieces for their line in the draft. Their running back room is solid. Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. Their receiver room is good too. Metcalf, I don't expect them to be like a 10-win team, but I do expect them to hover around the 9-8 win range just because Geno is probably a bottom 15 quarterback, despite being so average. The rest of the division, I love Matt Stafford this year. What's set up around him offensively. The defense will take a hit, but I do like Jared Verse on the defensive line. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp will dominate this season. And if Kyron Williams stays healthy throughout the year, Matt Stafford is going to go crazy. I was thinking about picking him for a long shot MVP pick, to be honest. He's set up just as good as Caleb Williams is. And then obviously the Niners at the top, 15-2. I have them losing to division rivals, Seahawks and Cardinals, beating the rest of the NFL. I think this team is the best team to not win a Super Bowl in a very long time. I mean, they've had the players for so long now, all pros everywhere on the roster. If they can't win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years, it'll probably be a bigger disappointment than when the Falcons led 28-3 in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the Niners, they have everything to lose now. I think every single game they're going to go in with the mindset, if they lose, it's going to be, well, how did we mess up so badly? Because they're expected to win, I mean, just about every single game.
I agree. It's just tough knowing Theo as a friend and being like, oh, God, that team is so good, but they just can't finish the job at the end.
Yeah, it's the expectations maybe that get to them. Maybe it's the fact that, teams have not started to figure them out, but I would say in the playoffs, they always turn a leaf. Like they always turn over a new leaf and they have many ways of beating you. Even Kittle will have, 4 or 5 below average games and then just pop off 3 catches, 3 touchdowns, something like that. They just, like you said, so many stars, but we'll see how they can fare with the expectations of this year.
That'll do it for our NFL predictions, our regular season MVP picks, and our college football slate for today. This is Flea Flicker Picks. I'm Tyler. That's Pal. And we'll see you next week.